Well,
welcome.
Oran,
thank you.
To our little talk.
Open Arms Projekt.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for your time and welcome to Jazzahead 2024 and our Stingray Jazz booth. Such a pleasure having you here.
It's a pleasure for me.
Thank you very much. So, you did have your showcase already. How was it?
It was great.
Did you have fun?
It went really well. Yeah.
Yep. Can you tell us a little bit about the performance? How was it like?
Oh, it was great. You know, first of all, the sound here was wonderful. So we just went right into the zone and just it was really beautiful. It was at the end of our tour, so I feel like the band has gelled in a really special way. So it was just really beautiful experience.
Last concert of the tour? Or do you have a little bit more?
No, last concert.
That's it.
Yeah, well, not forever. We'll be back.
No.
Don't scare us there.
Luckily.
Yeah.
Let me just dive into this beautiful piece of text here, because your project was recorded in Turkey, but not only there, it's also in Zimbabwe, in Brazil, the Czech Republic, the US, and Canada. How long did you record for?
We recorded for a long time. It was basically, as I toured, I traveled with this attitude of openness, and things happened in each place in different ways, but collaborations with traditional musicians, composers, and stuff like that. I just opened myself up for these opportunities. So as I toured, slowly and slowly I gathered these different collaborations, and then we started mixing the themes from different places and putting them together into this whole album that fits together that way.
Did you already had the connections from those places, or was that something that you had to build and then get there and make sense of it, if you know what I mean?
Yeah, it was all improvisationally done. So, for example, in Zimbabwe, I had 2 weeks off between the shows in France and Zimbabwe. So I could have just gone back to New York, but why do that when I could just go to Zimbabwe early? I had a friend who'd been going there since the 90s, so she knew a lot of people there, and she hooked me up with the traditional Mbira family, the spiritual music of the Mbira. And the night after I got there, it was all-night ceremony from like 6 p.m. till 8 a.m. People were getting possessed by the spirits and talking through the spirits. And
fascinating.
Yeah. Then I'm like, I'm not going to just play my trio concert, after that. So I had them come on stage with me and perform with me, and then we went to the studio, recorded some tracks. So this way things kind of just happen, and being open to them allows it to happen. So, yeah.
So were you caught by surprise?
Yeah. All these things were, the first track is with a legendary singer, Danilo Caymmi in Brazil.
Of course, the link with Dorival Caymmi as well.
Yeah.
And all the greats,
Yeah. And that just happened. I posted on Instagram driving to Rio, and his musical director, who is connected with me on Instagram, he said, "Oh, there's a choro thing, a traditional choro music happening at this place. Come now." So we drove right into there, and then hung out and played, and then had dinner with them, and he was like, "I know you do a lot of stuff, a lot of collaborations. Want to go into the studio tomorrow with Danilo?" Wow. I was like, "Sure, let's do it.
Just go as it happens."
Exactly, yeah.
Very good.
And so then there were all these little kind of points of light that sparked, and then putting them together into this album. I collected them, but then I also tried to take themes and pass it around from place to place. So the first track is me with Danilo doing Edoso Mujer no Mar. The last track is me with Kevin Hayes and Matt Wilson, my trio in New York, doing that same song but reimagining it. So there's a lot of these melodies that get passed from place to place.
So, Oran, fascinating stories. But I want to take a step back here and talk a little bit about your first discoveries and your first milestones. And could you take us back to the start of your path as a jazz artist and walk us through some of the breakthrough moments that shaped your career to date?
Yeah. Well, the moment that I discovered how much I love music was when I heard Louis Armstrong when I was 9 years old.
Classic.
Yeah. It was like the first CDs that we got in the house. And I was like, whoa, that's not music you can write down, What is he doing with his trumpet? I fell in love with Louis Armstrong, and that's all I listened to from the age of 9 to 13 was Louis Armstrong, New Orleans music. I went down to New Orleans. My folks brought me down there. Tuba Fats, who was a great legendary tuba player down there, kind of took me under his wing and brought me into all kinds of funeral bands and all his scene down there.
How long did you stay there?
I would go down for like a week or two with my family, and my mom became friends with his wife, and it just became like I was a little kid, but
Cool.
but he just saw my eagerness, and he was like, all right, let's come play with us, So
It's fantastic.
yeah.
And
Was there any schooling involved still? Because we have, of course, a lot of these talks with other artists, and the normal route, let's put it that way, is then when a kid has a little spark of musicality in it, then normally they reside to classical piano, the roots of music. How did that go with you?
So I took lessons. I started piano when I was 4 or 5, probably 5, I think, and then violin when I was 8, sax when I was 9, and then guitar when I was 10. And I had a great guitar teacher who was a composer. He was a film composer, and so he saw my interest, and he started teaching me composition, counterpoint, improvisation, and stuff like that. He had a thing where you would write down like a list of your favorite songs in the back of the notebook, and he would learn the chords and teach it. And usually it was like rock songs.
really dissect those songs.
Yeah,
That's cool.
Exactly. I guess most of his students, it was like, just pop songs from whatever that was. And I was like, this Louis Armstrong song, I want to learn this, and he was like, okay, let's do it.
Must have been a motivation for him as well.
Yeah.
But you are quite the explorer.
Yeah. And then when he left town, that was in Boston. He left for LA, and he was like, you should go study with this guy. And he wrote me the name of George Garzone. And George Garzone was like my teacher from 13 on. And he was, for me, one of the greatest tenor sax players, really soulful. And so he kind of like pointed me in the next direction. So,
Oran, I want to talk a little bit about recognition, because you've been described as ebullient,
yeah.
by the New York Times, and a composer of eminent individuality by the legendary Yusef Lateef.
Mm-hmm.
How do these accolades resonate with you, and in what ways do they reflect your artistic journey?
I mean, the Yusef Lateef one for me is very personal and I feel very honored to have spent time with him, and to have studied with him. I learned a lot from Yusef Lateef, and he wrote the liner notes for my first album, and he was like an inspiration also in terms of what I'm doing with world music and taking influences from different parts of the world in a very respectful way, and honoring those cultures. And he kind of really showed me a lot about how to do that. He's been doing that since the 60s, So, Yusef Lateef was a huge... So anything that he says for me is really, meaningful. And then, of course, New York Times and places like that, I feel honored that they listen to the music and whether they like it or not. I also have some really great bad reviews that I'd love. I got a 1-star review once that started with the sentence, "It is hard to listen to this album because of the sound of Benny Goodman rolling over in his grave."
Wow.
And I was like,
Okay,
That's wild.
let's set the tone.
exactly. But it's obvious the guy didn't really get what I was trying to do. He thought I was he was expecting like a Benny Goodman recreation. And on that album we were...
You're really gonna emulate.
Yeah, that's
okay.
what he was probably... They saw Benny Goodman, they gave it to like a huge Benny Goodman fan. But what we were doing on that album was the opposite. It was taking the music apart and taking it to all kinds of new directions. So for him, I'm just happy he listened to it,
He gave
and that he had
gave
some
it a fair
reaction.
shot, right?
Yeah, he had a reaction to it.
So let's talk about the Open Arms project.
Yeah.
Mhm.
The philosophy is obviously the open arms to the various cultures.
Yeah.
As we talked about,
Mhm.
recording it.
Yeah.
How did this vision came to you?
I always, as I toured, I was always gravitating to the traditional musicians, and not just traditional musicians, also forward-thinking composers and stuff in each country. And those were the moments that I said, wow, I'm really lucky to be traveling the world, and get to meet like an Indonesian, percussionist and experience that rhythm and really grow.
Yeah.
So this feeling of openness and growth through openness is really something that I've carried with me since I was little, and so it really is my attitude, you know. And so that being able to kind of put it together into this storyline, into this actual piece that works together as a whole is kind of the goal.
Would you consider this aspect of yours, like traveling and encountering new cultures, encountering new sources of inspiration, you know, as a crucial part of who you are?
Yeah,
and,
absolutely. I think, you know, I there's this kind of like, I've always grown with multiple identities, you know, like being a child, like an immigrant child in the house, at school. I've always been gravitating to other immigrant groups and other people who don't feel quite at home, because I never felt quite at home any one place, you know? So I feel at home with other people who have different perspectives. So that's always been, you know, since my childhood, something that multiple identities coming together creates rich and fertile ground for new creation. Because also what I wanted to do with this is I'm not a Zimbabwean musician, so I don't want to pretend that I'm Zimbabwean playing like they would. And then all of a sudden I'm Turkish, and then all of a sudden, you know, I'm me with my multiple, you know, traditions, you know, but I'm coming in honestly, equally, and creating something new as a partner with them, as an equal partner. And when people see that attitude, they also go out of their comfort zone. It could be a traditional Mbira musician who's been doing ceremonies their whole life, right. And now they are like, wow, let's go, let's do this in a different way, you know? So, or I was working with Roma musicians in Czech Republic, you know, for those people who might not know, Roma is the people who are traditionally called gypsies or Tsigan. And I remember the accordion player when he's amazing, you know, but he's used to playing his thing. And then when he, like, at one moment he just stood up and was like, all right, let's go, you know, and it was, let's do it, you know?
So when you reflect on your compositions, I mean, it's a great interplay of structured compositions, but also the free spirit attitude. I mean, we're witnessing it right now.
Yeah.
How do you navigate that when you're playing with musicians of all these different traditions and where all these people come from? How do you navigate in composing something that is still a part of you?
Because it really seems like a quest of pushing and pulling in a way, you know, like things that you learn, you gotta let go of some things, and then in the moment learn things on the spot, you know. How does it go?
Yeah, I think it's really about the connection with a person.
Right.
So I think it's about trust, you know. So building trust, you first have to eat together and hang out together and build a certain human level of trust. And then you can start pushing boundaries of comfort zone. And I love to be pushed outside my comfort zone. For me, that's where I am the most creative. Not just doing the thing that I've done forever and ever, but having some, like, the interplay with somebody else is where I get my creativity, you know? Yeah. So it's much easier for me to create with somebody else than just to sit in my room and imagine, you know? So yeah, for me, it's really about that connection and building that, you know?
How does that reflect to you being on stage with, for instance, this project? How does this affect the performance? What does the performance look like, and what can people that come to your showcase or your concert, what can they expect?
Well, so a project like this, it's hard to have the Zimbabwean guys and the Turkish guys and the Brazilian guys and everyone come together.
It would be very nice, though. But
it would be, yeah.
That would be killing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We tour with a quartet version. And here we're playing with Brazilian musicians, because I've spent a lot of time lately in Sao Paulo, so I've really grown close to these musicians. And we take different melodies and rhythms that have developed in these collaborations, and then I also have electronics that I built out of stems from the recordings. So I took like just the hand clapping from Zimbabwe, and then a little loop of a string instrument from Turkey, and a woman singing from Czech Republic, and 2 indigenous flutes from Brazil. And I trigger these loops in and out spontaneously. And the drummer can trigger them as well. So the loops and the electronics become actually part of the improvisation. It's not like a playback, you know?
That's fascinating. That's fascinating that you choose to go that route because usually and normally maybe jazz is seen as traditional acoustic instruments then and there in the moment.
Yeah.
But it's interesting how somehow you get these people that never met each other maybe to still collaborate via new technology. You
Exactly.
know? Yeah.
And maintaining that spirit of in the momentness.
Yeah.
Because I was thinking, like, I don't want to be playing to a recording and then just have to do it a certain way. I want that, like, the drummer in the moment is like, boom, and now we have like a mbira going, you know? And every night it's different, where we ended on with different things happening. So that becomes part of the textures and the language that's happening, you know, along with the acoustic improvisations.
So I think we talked a little bit about this already, but Jazzahead 2024. How do you prepare for such an event, for such a showcase event? Is there something that you think about that's different, you know, in comparison to other shows that you do? And how does it differ from other gigs that you do?
Well, you know, there's this element that there's so many professional people here, you know, that you want to impress in a way, you know. And in the past, when I've done showcases in other places or even here, I would be thinking a lot like, okay, I only have 45 minutes because the sets here are shorter than a normal concert. Let me try to stick everything I have in here, you know? But then at a certain point, I realized a few years ago, no, all you need to do is just play and make it spiritual, you know? So in the same way as I treat it now just like a regular concert, like I get into a very focused point with the band and I just let everything slide away and I'm 100% in the moment. And here it really helps that the sound is really good. The sound quality was excellent. So we could just lose ourselves and get into this spiritual place and let that flow.
So I think your story is really about breaking barriers with the help of jazz, music, musicality from across the globe. And in your view, how can jazz be used as a vehicle for fostering peace and understanding of the world today? Like, is that like part of the story that you want to bring forward everywhere that you go?
Absolutely. I think the values that are missing, the skills that are missing today, or that can help the world today, are the same skills that are central to this music, which is listening. Like deep, real listening is missing in the political discourse, in the society, you know?
Yeah.
Creating. There's so much destruction happening. There's so much focus on destruction that creating something new and envisioning something new and how do we want it to be. Not necessarily creating the same thing we had in the past, but creating something new together. Co-creation, not just one person creating their vision, but co-creation, I think is really needed right now. And also connection. I think there's so many forces that separate people and say you are this and you must fight this because he is this and she is that, and people go into their corner and retreat and like the other. And connection, finding that human connection is so crucial right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And just want to go back as well to a few things that other people said about you again, and being named as #1 Rising Star Clarinetist by DownBeat Magazine. That's really no small feat, and yeah, that recognition. We talked a little bit about that, and how do you take that recognition, and does it help you making connections in a place like Jazzahead at the moment? Like people like know you, like, hey, there's Oran, and does it help you to move forward in that business sense, you know?
Sure. Well, first of all, I don't think that there is anything such as a #1 of anything in music, you know? There you can be number one you know? Like I'm trying to be the number one version of myself that I can be. I think everybody's the most evocative musician you can be is being as much yourself as you can, you know? So getting away from trying to imitate Coltrane or imitate whatever you're, you know, but imitate him in the sense that he was searching for himself, you search for yourself. So
Exactly.
that ranking thing is not something that resonates with me. But for example, in that case, the fact that these writers and critics listened to the album and took the time to listen to the album, and I know a lot of them care about music and really listen deeply to music. So that really moves me, that they listened to the music, they took the time. And I think, yeah, those types of things do help. For me, the most important thing, though, is getting the music in front of people. So something like Jazzahead, like this was my goal with this album, was really to get the music in front of people, into people's ears, whether it's through the recording or coming out and having that live experience with people. So like today, a lot of people are coming up to me and saying, oh, like people I don't know, hey, I saw your concert yesterday, it was great, you know. I also did a show for children in the morning. People are coming up and saying, oh, you know, we saw that. So that for me is, I think, nobody's ever come up to me and said, oh, well, sometimes I saw this article about you in the New York Times or something, but really I saw you playing this and I connected with me personally. I want you to come to my club, or I want you to come to my festival, or I want to write about you or something. Then that kind of moves things forward. So that's why Jazzahead for me was really, when I was accepted to play in the showcase, that really made me happy, because I was like, okay, we did Winter Jazz Fest in New York, which is also a place that a lot of people come. We did this. Let me get this connection with people in the industry, you know?
Cool, and that's what it's about, like a connection with your peers,
Exactly.
as well, a connection with people in the business.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic.
Exactly. Musicians here and everything, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Looking forward, we have one last bit of question for you.
sure.
If you are able to answer. What does the future hold for you, and in the same sense, what does it hold for us? Can we expect more music,
yeah.
new music? What's happening?
Of course, you're in the end of your tour, but you said there's another tour. There's more music coming up, and there's more performances.
Yep.
What does the future look like?
Yeah, well, in terms of performances, I'll be back in Europe end of September, October. And then also next April, I know I have some stuff, 2025, and probably summer 2025. Out of Jazzahead, we're already kind of getting some more bookings, so there's going to be a few tours coming up in the next year in Europe. And in terms of new recordings, I'm working on some new material. I have a duo with the great vibraphonist Sasha Berliner, where we both use electronics to create all these soundscapes and stuff. So that's a prod. And then also this the first track with the great Danilo Caimi. We're working on a full album together. And then Open Arms Projekt continues with new inspirations from around the world. That quartet I'm really interested in touring with more, especially with the Brazilian musicians that I brought out here. It's really, I feel a deep connection. And actually I'm going to be going more and more to Brazil. My wife is from Brazil. We had a baby, and the baby was born in Brazil. So we're going to try to spend a lot of time in Brazil with her family and stuff. So building this relationship with the musicians in Brazil has been, like, that is a scene that really inspires me. So much fresh music coming out of there, plus the deep tradition. So, yeah.
I can see someone starting to shine here.
Yeah.
Hey, man, Brazilian jazz cats, Brazilian cats, they kill it.
Totally. It's amazing. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Inspiring. And also the children's project, what I did here in the morning.
Yeah.
First of all, I think it's great that Jazzahead had that. They brought in 600 kids to see our show for
the elementary schools.
Yeah.
It's great.
Cool.
And we do that a lot as we tour. We play for a main concert, and then we also do educational concerts. And I was just at Mladi Ladi Jazz Fest in Czech Republic. This is our 10th year collaborating with them every year. And I also have a teaching method with this. They translated the whole method into Czech, and they have 14 teaching artists that I come each year and train, and who teach in public schools throughout the country. Last year they reached 5,000
Look at that.
children, and in underserved areas too. So really building up this educational side of what I do and working with kids as I tour and stuff. That's really something I
That's so
believe in.
important. That's so important. Yeah. Oran Etkin, Open Arms Project. Thank you very much.
Thank you
for your time.
Yeah.
For your answers. It's been great talking to you.
It's been great to have a chat.
Yeah.
Thanks for that.
Sure. And we wish you a great Jazz Ahead 2024.
Thanks so much.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks.